I am Zeus, and today we will be going over emerging adulthood. Now, emerging adulthood is a lesser-known stage of development that occurs between about the ages of 18 and 28. A lot of people are familiar with Erikson's stages of development, including adolescence, where identity is formed, and then young adulthood, where we start to learn to form more permanent relationships. Emerging adulthood is the stage of life between these, where a young person doesn't really feel like a kid anymore, but also doesn't completely feel like an adult. Perhaps you've heard that things weren't always quite like this. That in the past, after somebody graduated high school, they moved out on their own. You were told that they got a house and a car and a wife and kids and a career, and everything was kind of just hunky-dory. And that now there's more people that want to be supported by their parents for years, even well into their 20s and sometimes even their 30s. Often they want to stay at home. They're not really even looking sometimes for those relationships, the permanent relationships, starting a family that is so well known to be part of your 20s. So that's what this emerging adulthood is, and here we plan to give you information on this rather confusing stage of life, or either your life or perhaps the life of somebody you love. So, what is emerging adulthood? Well, we have to start from the beginning with our man Erikson. Erikson's theory of lifespan development is very well known and respected. There's a lot of theorists that have development ended during our teenage years, like Piaget, even Freud. He had developmental stages of the human stop very early, but Erikson had the idea that we never stop developing as humans. We go through different stages our whole lives, learning and growing as people. He felt that the teenage years were responsible for something called identity formation, that there was this strife that we go through at the time where if we succeed in the goal that we have during our teenage years, then we will have a steady identity. And then we can move towards the next step of young adulthood. Now, essentially, he felt the job of teenagers is to figure out who they are. You may have noticed teenagers doing this, experimenting with different ideas, habits, sexuality, joining different clubs, playing different instruments. And Erikson thought this was all in an attempt to figure out who they were as a person and who they want to be in the future. Now, when you're in your 20s, that's a different time of development, he thought. He called these people young adults, and he felt that as a young adult, once you're, say, 19 years old, you're looking to start a family, develop the friendships that will last the rest of your lives. The person is going to want to start their career and establish professional, social bonds that will enrich the rest of their lives and kind of leave their childhood behind. Now, at this point, a lot of people just stop because they think this isn't particularly realistic. To go from a complete identity by the time you're 18, which pretty much nobody does, to immediately thinking about starting a family, perhaps 150 years ago, but these days there's a lot of steps in the middle of that. And for that matter, the issue of identity hasn't really been finished either at that age. You don't know who you are completely by the time you're 18. Older people will think back to their own early 20s and realize they had no real idea what path they were going to take and barely even knew who they were. And younger people will look forward to that time and feel that they are completely not ready to enter adulthood themselves. Now, that was the thought of a psychologist named Arnett. Now, he felt that perhaps in the past, these two stages, were separate, when there were fewer choices to be made and fewer expectations on adults. But after the industrial age, Erikson's theory was no longer as accurate as it used to be, or at the very least, doesn't work that way for a lot of people anymore. In modern America, people are getting married later and later in life, putting off having children as well. They're not jumping into adulthood, and a growing population of people in their 20s aren't ready to live on their own anymore either. They weren't spontaneously turning into adults the moment they left high school. They wanted time to emerge as an adult instead of do it all at once, hence the name emerging adulthood. So this is a unique time for people. During this time, many problems arise and can cause people to linger in this phase. The loss of adolescent friends who've moved on in their lives can be very stressful, as part of a teenager's identity can be based around these friendships, and this can lead to emotions of loneliness and stress, very similar to what we see in people who get divorced. In addition, entry into the labor market is very stressful, and expectations can be very high, and the young person doesn't always feel that they can measure up to these expectations. The young person wants a job that pays well, is satisfying, and fits in well with their own identity, and this is not always something that's going to be particularly available or even realistic as a goal. Now, another theorist named Levinson had made similar points back in the 70s, 78 I believe. He had a theory called the dream, where he felt adults were motivated by a particular image of the future, such as a house, a family, a successful career. These images are things that we would expect to have by midlife in our 40s or 50s, and this drives us forward to achieve this dream. There are some problems with these dreams, however. Firstly, they may not be very realistic. It may not be possible to find a job that fits the perfect way that you want it to fit. You may have to put up with some drawbacks to the job that you didn't expect, and that may make you feel like it isn't the right job for you, and that there must be some job out there with no hassles. If this dream is a job without any hassles, that's not going to be all that realistic. And for people going through emerging adulthood, they may not have formulated their dream yet. They may not have goals of what they want to have at midlife. They may not know if they even want children or a family, may not even know what type of job that they want. And without this dream, they're not well motivated to drive forward in life and feel stuck kind of in this feeling of being in between stages of life. There is good news, however, along with some problems that arise from this time. The good news is that, in general, the stage goes pretty well. People in emerging adulthood, on average, start to develop less depression and more positive self-esteem. Depression and negative self-esteem kind of cap out in your teenage years. And as someone is learning to be an adult, they start to get less depressed and feel better about themselves. People may not leave high school with all the self-sufficiency they feel they need to be an adult, but they gradually get there during this time of emerging adulthood. Of course, there are some problems that can occur during emerging adulthood as well. Changing friends can lead to loneliness and a sense of isolation. In addition, there can be a sense of that feeling in between that I had spoken of, and not really having any place you belong, not really fitting in with the adults, and not fitting in with adolescents anymore either. It is a time of kind of a lot of stress because it's a time of really great change. And someone in this stage has not mastered the skill of resilience, which is the skill of adapting to change and stress in a healthy way. So for right now, let's look at some of the problems that arise during this time and find some solutions.